And so it is, and so we let it be. Again, right? What do you listen to? What do you hear? What's the difference between hearing and listening? Do you ever get quiet enough to hear the air? Do you ever get quiet enough to hear the sun? Do you ever get quiet enough to hear your own blood coursing through your system? And if you do you pay attention? Or what do you listen to? Do you listen to the noise of the universe? Our universe is so noisy right now. The noise in the internet, those of you who are on the internet, the noise is so loud. The noise in the ethers is so loud. The noise of our country is so loud. But you know what's louder than any of that for most of us? The noise in our own heads. I am, you may not know this, but I am an introvert by nature, which means I need a lot of quiet time and alone time. I'm married to an extrovert. Why? Well, because I love him, that's why. But why? In our first years of relationship, I'm like, oh my gosh, would you just be quiet? I've learned not to say that out loud so much anymore. But I think we all need that. We all need to sort of stop listening to the noise of the outer. I found not really quite a story, but a clip this week, and it was a woman who was talking to her husband whose head was buried in the newspaper, right? And she's trying to get his attention. And she finally says, I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong. She says to him, has it ever occurred to you that there might be more to life than what's going on in the world? That cracked me up. I thought it was funny. Did it ever occur to you that there's more to life than what's going on out there? And we are human beings, but we're spiritual beings. And our society has gotten us so caught in the outer. Now, you know, when we were first human on the planet, we needed to be aware of the outer because we would be killed by the bears and the lions and the omais, right? The lions and bears and omais. But at this stage in our evolution, it is imperative that we take our attention off the outer, if not 100%, at least for a moment every day. Right? There's a big gray area in there, and bring it on the inner. I know we've talked before that our humanity is a horizontal line, and that our divinity is a vertical. And line is not the right word, field, so to speak. And it's in that crossover point that we find access to the quiet. Jesus said, be still and know. Buddha sat underneath that tree in quiet for how many years? Every major religion talks about the silence. That's an oxymoron in itself, isn't it? When we're talking about the silence, and we're talking about listening, and we're talking, 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 and I'm talking about talking with our mouth, but in the brain, right? How many of us have loopy minds that just simply do not turn off? Especially when you get an idea, or an issue, or a struggle, or a challenge. It's like push play, hit record, boom, you're gone. 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 weeks, 3 months. And then you go, wait, what have I been thinking about? All that noise. Now there's plenty of things to think about, so I'm not suggesting that we don't pay attention to the outer, but what I am suggesting is that what we're up to is that we need to pay more attention to what we are listening to and why we're listening to it. So I have a good friend named Cheryl Lynn who does these beautiful Facebook posts, and usually when she writes them, I'm like, I could have written that. You know, it's like, that was so good. Wait, that sounded a little weird, but you know what I mean, right? It's like, it's so in resonance with where I am, and she and I have always been in resonance, and she posted a post this week that was really about what so many of us do. It's like, I'm a positive person, I don't want to be around negativity. I'm too sensitive, I'm not going there. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to know. Like all of those things that we're all probably guilty of to some degree. But then she goes on to say that there is a time and place for that. And the time and place for that is when we need to take care of ourselves. But if we do that as a mode of being, so to speak, if we get caught in that all the time, we're actually adding to the dualistic paradigm that we're experiencing on the planet. Because ultimately, we're separating ourselves, we're isolating ourselves, and we're creating more separation. And in that more separation, the truth is, and I'll admit it for myself, and you can check in for yourself, that level of beingness is filled with judgment. Oh, man, I didn't want to hear that. Right? You didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear it either. But it's true. And we are the Center for Spiritual Oneness, and we are the ones who are waking up, right? Because you're sitting here today, and you come here, and there's something in you that is being called to a bigger beingness on the planet. And that bigger beingness is not to isolate and to get silent and still. One of Unity's co-founders, Myrtle Fillmore, talks about there is such a thing as too much silence. I'm like, not for me. But her point is that from the silence, then we take action, which is a very different place than taking action from the noise. Do you want a demonstration of that? Sure, they say. I'm not sure, they say. Okay, so come over here, and we're going to noise. The noise of the loopy mind, the noise that's processing the information that we got. We had 3 big things in our lives this week. We had 2 daughters who are sick. I mean, like, not like cold or flu sick, like big stuff. And a friend of mine died. Oh, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's like, whoa, dude, universe, what? Stop! Right? I'm going to isolate. But the truth is, we are called, we're living on this planet, and we get to navigate this planet. We get to navigate what life gives us. So I could have gone into loopy mind. Oh my God, I can't believe it's happening, and I don't want it to happen, and I want it to not happen, and not to her, and she like is all out of all our daughters. This is one of our other daughters. She goes, out of all the daughters, she's the nice one. We don't understand why it happened to the nice one. The rest of us we would get, but she's the nice, you know what I mean? Like loop, 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 and I can't believe it's happening, and I don't want it to happen. I'm going to deny that it has any power over me. I'm just going to deny it. I'm going to bury my head. Da, 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 da. Are you exhausted yet? And if I take action from that place, and I'm like, together, okay, come on, better, together. If I take action, then I'm in frantic mode, and I'm like, nothing's working, and I don't like what I'm getting, right? That's how we live our lives. Juxtaposed is just the demonstration. I have all these things that came up this week that jarred in me. I have all these things that like shook my foundation. I'm going to go listen more deeply. And the question that I'm going to ask is, what is mine to do with this? Not what is theirs to do, because I have a whole list of things I think they should do, but that's none of my business on one level. But to get really still and to listen to the song of my own heart. And what I hear is whole love. Love is greater than any fear. Love is the only thing that'll drive out darkness, or drive out hate, or judgment, or resistance. And ultimately, any reaction other than love is fear-based. And so my work becomes to stand in the center of my big family with all this reaction going on and know the truth. So my truth is I know I know, I see, I call forth that she navigates all the way through this challenge and comes out whole and complete. I know that. I can know that in my heart of hearts. It's really hard to know that over here with all the evidence, right? But when I get still and I listen to Spirit, Spirit is love. Spirit is wholeness. Spirit is oneness. And all the things that come from wholeness, love, and oneness, which is kindness and compassion and space to listen. And we talk about listening. I thought we were going to go talking about listening to each other, but it totally morphed. We were going to talk about listening because Shauna was doing a songwriter workshop, and then that got postponed, but we decided to do the same talk, but there's a whole other talk for your songwriter workshop. But when we listen to each other, if we can come to that place of stillness, and that place of heart, and just open your heart, and then listen. It's like in the meditation. What's it feel like to listen with your eyes and your palms and your feet and your heart? What's it feel like to really listen? And when you really listen at that level, you hear Spirit. And you hear Spirit through the situation, through the circumstance. And when you listen, see, listening isn't enough. And that's what Myrtle Fillmore says. Listening is not enough. Because from that place of deep listening, there is an action. Joe Dispenza, one of my recent teachers, says, you know, if you sit down to meditate or to pray and you stand up and you're not different, it was not worth the point. I mean, like, what's the point? He says, every time you sit down to meditate, every time you sit down to pray, intend to be different. Because if you don't be different, you won't see different. And you ultimately won't even do different. So if every time you sit down for your meditation or your prayer, you listen deeply to what Spirit says now. And here's the thing about Spirit. When Spirit speaks, it's simple and it's direct. I get a lot of people in my private clients, in my practice, in my work, that say, how do you know if it's Spirit or not? Here's how you know. Again, same demonstration, right? If you get a divine idea and you think it's Spirit and you run with it, and it's like, well, I could do that, and I could do that, and that would mean this, and that would make that, and that goes da, 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 and then you take it way out in the future, that initial spark could have been Spirit, but the rest of it is your mind. Spirit is simple. Spirit is going to be like love. Like pick up the phone, make the phone call, stop, go. It's simple. And what we do when we listen to Spirit is we make stuff up about it, right? Like what it means. We've talked about meaning making. So there's a story of a man who was asked to serve God. I can kind of relate to this story on so many levels because I had heard about 10 years ago, are you willing to serve creation? And I said yes. And that led me onto a level of initiation and led me to the life that I currently have, which is way beyond, in so many ways, the life I was living at that time. I was still a minister, I was serving churches, I was doing really good work, but it opened me in such a way that blew my mind, actually. I was talking with another potential client this week that now became a client. She's like, you're blowing my mind. I said, then we're already doing the work. Right? We want to blow the circuits of the logical, rational, subconscious habit, pattern, hardwired mind so that we can access something different. So anyway, this man was asked to serve God and became willing to serve God. And he said, okay, what's my job? God. What's my work? God. And God said, see that big boulder right outside your door? Your work is to push on it. And so he pushed, and he pushed, and he pushed, and he pushed all day long. And then he pushed all day long the next day. And then he pushed the next day. And then the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, and all day long, every single day, he was pushing that rock, that boulder. And then one day, he had a little glimmer of doubt that came into his awareness. One version of the story says it was Satan, but since we don't use that word here, we'll call it doubt, right? A little glimmer of doubt. And he then moved into more doubt. He kept pushing, and he kept pushing, but now he's like, what am I doing this for? I don't get it, I don't understand. And so he began lamenting to God. And he said, what? He goes, I have been pushing this same boulder for months and months and months, and it has not moved. I have failed. I must have heard wrong. And God said, no, my son, you heard correctly. I asked you to push that rock. I didn't ask you to move it. Well, what's the point? Nothing's happened. I've spent all these months and with no fruits from my work, right? And God said, no, look at you. Look at the mirror. You're strong, you're muscled, you're lean, you're persistent. He listed off all these attributes. His physical being had changed, as well as his emotional and mental being. He now had the strength to be a true servant of God, whatever that means, right? He was changed at depth, but he didn't realize it, because that's how change happens. But he was never asked to move the rock. He was only asked to push the rock. If you ever get a divine idea and you're like, oh my God, I know exactly what to do. And then a few months goes by and you go, Did I make up a story about what that meant? I'm a grand story maker upper. Anybody else? You like to make stories up about stuff that happens in the world, right? I'm really good at it. But I'm aware that I'm good at it, so it's a phrase I use a lot, right? The story I'm making up about that is. So when we listen to Spirit, it is in this now moment. When we listen to Spirit, the action that we are to take will be in this now moment. You will not hear from Spirit. In 3 months and 2 days, you'll be asked to do that. It doesn't work that way. That's your mind. That's your ego. That's whatever else is going on. But in this now moment, what do you listen to? What do you listen to? And what's the next step? Because there's always a next step. So I've been listening, and I was called here 6 months ago. I was called here last October. Alan and I met here in this building. Some of you have heard this story. And I sat here, right here. We still have the pews, and I had this stamp over me. There's something for me to do here. And Alan said, I met Alan. He goes, there's something for me to do here. And we said, wow, what is that? And so we've been doing, to the best of our ability of listening. And in March, I agreed to come for 6 months. And August is 6 months from March. And so my 6-month agreement is complete. But that doesn't have anything to do with the Center for Spiritual Oneness. It has to do just with my listening. And when I listen in making this completion, when I listen in what's next for me, and part of what's next is that I got a call and I got an offer, a job offer, that actually pays quite nicely, even though it's not all about money, right? I got a job offer, and so I'll be going for 4 months to do a temporary ministry in Tucson, Arizona, helping them hold the space while they're getting ready to hire a new minister. Their ministers are retiring after 53 years. Can you imagine? 53 years. I got my work cut out for me. So that's coming. But when I sit in that, and I'm, rallying like the man pushing the rock. But I thought it was going to be this, and I thought it was going to look like that, and I thought this, and I thought that, and I'm following to the best of my ability, my guidance, and I don't know. And then I listen deeply. Because what I'd heard is you have work to do here. And now what I hear is you did work here. And so the board is solid. The board members that are here are solid, and we're having a community conversation in a little bit here after the potluck, and we'll really look at what's next and what's possible. And one of the things I said to the leadership is, in my going away, so to speak. I don't even want to say I'm going away. We live here, so I won't be back, but I'm taking a job, a different job for a while. And I said, what if this moment actually activates the community in a way that we're looking for, actually activates more leadership and more ownership in the community? What if, not that there's anything wrong with me being here, but what if my being here sort of kept people on the sidelines going, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And now I'm not here, so maybe there's an activation like, oh wow, there's really space for leadership here, and there is. There's lots of space for volunteering and ownership, and we have a whole list of things that we would like people to serve in roles, and we'll talk more about that at the community conversation. But what if this is the next best thing? Now, I on a real personal level, I'd be really happy if you didn't go, yay, she's leaving! If you're like that way, don't tell me, because I still have my, that would hurt. But what if it becomes like, wow, she really got us here, and now look at where we're going. And now what's next? And now what's next? But the work, individually and collectively, is to listen deeply, to get still enough, to get out of the loopy mind, to get still enough, individually and collectively. What's next? What's next? And there's always a what's next, and what's mine to do, and what's ours to do. And then, because listening isn't enough, take action. It's about taking action. So there was a story of a man who was studying with a guru in India, and he was learning that Brahman was all good, that there was only oneness. And he was practicing this, and it was a new idea for him, but he was practicing and was studying. He was a disciple who was studying with his guru, and he was like, there's only good, there's only good, there's only Brahman, there's only God, there's only good. And he was out walking one day, and all of a sudden he saw an elephant charging towards him. So he stood his ground, he planted his feet, and he prayed out loud. He said his mantra, there is only God, there is only Brahman, there is nothing that can hurt me, it is all good, it is all good, it is all good. Well, that elephant approached him, grabbed him with his tusk, and threw him up in the air, and he landed feet, long ways away, unconscious. And they carried him back to the village and back to the guru, and when he came conscious, he goes, I don't get it, there's supposed to be nothing that's supposed to hurt me, nothing can get me because it's all good. What happened? And the guru said, you're right, it's all good, and it's all Brahman. But the man who was riding the elephant, who was yelling at you to get out of the way, was also Brahman. What are you listening to? What are you listening to? And is there another voice? Because when we get caught in listening to our own selves, we don't hear the voice of the man on the elephant. We don't hear. We have to get still. We have to spend that time in the silence if we want to continue to awaken, if we want to align ourselves with the wisdom, with the love, with the grace, with the oneness that is God. And when we listen from that place, when we listen with our hearts on, we see a different world. We see the beauty in you. We see the grace in you. We see the oneness in you. We see beauty in the world. And we see beauty in ourselves as we see it in each other. So I charge you to listen. And I ask you, what are you listening to?